Welcome to the Facts and the Truth. We're going to talk about this immigration issue, deporting people, and how judges, federal judges, are trying to get these people back into the United States. I'd like to recap a little bit on the structure of the government. We have three branches of government. We have the president, who's the executive. His job is to enforce and make sure that laws are enforced, the laws of the Constitution and other laws. And we're going to talk about a couple today. His duties and how he's elected and his powers are described in Article 2 of the Constitution. Article 1 describes Congress, how they're elected, what their job is. And one of their primary jobs is to create law, to create bills that get voted on, passed, signed by the president, and they become law. So all of our immigration laws on the books and anything in the Constitution is law. We're a nation of laws. So, third clause of the Constitution is the Supreme Court, how they are established and how they are to rule on whether things are constitutional or unconstitutional. So, that clause also talks about how Congress creates the lower courts, the courts that sit beneath the three branches of government. So how can a judge, federal judge or whatever, that sits below our three primary branches of government order one of the branches to do something because they think it's wrong? Well, they're attempting this. The reason they're attempting it is because it's never been fully challenged and explained by the Supreme Court of whether these judges have that authority or not. Per the Constitution, because it says they are lower courts, they should not have power over the executive. So, why are they doing this? Well, to cause bad press, to make people think that, well, because they said so, even though they may not have the authority. And many constitutional scholars believe and have opinionated that this is not constitutional. It is not constitutional for a district federal judge to order the president to turn a plane around. Because guess what? That judge is not the commander-in-chief of the military. The president is, and only the president. Didn't have the authority to say, bring him back. Because again, you can't order the president to do something because you are a lower court. And again, this is in the Constitution, that a district federal judge is created by Congress. And they create lower courts. That's the key word. It says lower courts in the Constitution. Article 3. So where does any district federal judge come off thinking that they can order any branch of government that sits above them? But there's other things to consider. Title 18, USC, Section 242. I don't know. This is violation of constitutional rights under the color of law. Okay, what is the color of law? Color of law is making something sound official and legal when it's not. Simply because somebody in some sort of position of power or authority said so. Let me give you an example. If a police officer tells you to go kill your neighbor, does that make it legal because the officer said so? No, it doesn't. It's still a crime. Still a felony. If a judge tells you, go kill that guy, Does it make it right? No. Just because the judge said so doesn't make it legal. So when a judge orders the president to commit an action that is not legal, it doesn't make it legal just because he's a federal judge or she's a federal judge. Let me read this. It makes it a crime for a person acting under the color of law, the color of any law, to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. So, depriving a right. So if a judge, a district federal judge that sits in a lower court than the Supreme Court, decides, I don't like what's happening, I'm going to order the president to bring this guy back. Well, he's depriving the president of his Article 2 powers, his rights. So how can this be legal? It's not, according to what it says in black and white, but because it's never been officially challenged and ruled upon by the Supreme Court, these judges are doing this. They did the same thing when they were challenging Trump's immunity as president. And the Supreme Court had to rule on what it meant for his presidential immunity and what was not covered under immunity. So this is no different. You have these federal judges that are biased, and nobody has ever really challenged in this way when it came to the millions of people that Clinton deported, Obama deported, and other presidents. Why now? Well, because there's a biased agenda afoot. And they're trying, even though it is very likely the Supreme Court will probably rule in favor of laws and what it says in the Constitution, when all is said and done, they're still throwing wrenches into the system just because they can. That's why they're doing it, just because they can. And when you look here, there are other laws that prevent this. Let's take a look at another, the Supremacy Clause. Okay? Remember how I described Article 1 of the Constitution is Congress, Article 2 is the President, Article 3 is the Supreme Court. This is Article 6. So, when Founding Fathers were writing the Constitution, Article 6 came very early. Okay, Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause. I'm going to read this because it's important to hear the actual words that were written. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. So that's pretty cut and dry. It's basically telling us that the laws in the Constitution, the laws created per the Constitution, as described in Article 1, 2, and 3 being interpreted by the Supreme Court, that those laws reign supreme over all states and all laws in the individual states. and that the judges in those states are bound by those federal laws. So, immigration laws are federal. It means that you have to follow the law. And you might ask yourself, okay, well, what's going on with, why would we need that? Well, you got to remember, you have local government in each state. You have courts, you have laws that sometimes vary state to state. So let's think of one. Okay. Here in the state of California, we have emissions laws. Laws that basically say your vehicle cannot have a big pollution issue, and that you have to pass a smog regulation test in order for that car to be on the road. In other states, they have no such laws. So if you drive your car across country and decide, I'm going to live somewhere else in the state, your car is no longer subject to the laws of California, because that state either has no matching law that California has, or it has no law at all about that. So that gets deferred to whatever federal law may govern. But here we have immigration, which is something that governs every state. These immigration laws are federal laws that govern every state. So how can a judge in D.C. or any particular state say that, well, no, I don't want this guy deported, or I don't want this guy deported quickly under actual law, because they just want to throw a wrench into the system? That's a violation of the Supremacy Clause. Think about that. The Supremacy Clause is law. This is a fact. Can't dispute it. No one can actually decide otherwise whether something is adhering to the law or not, or whether the law itself is directly related, except for the Supreme Court. So you might think, well, isn't it always going to be enforced like that? Well, again, these are being challenged because the Supreme Court in this particular instance has yet to rule on an exact type of case where somebody is deported and people have ordered the president and other officials to do otherwise. Now, if this guy was to be brought back from El Salvador, is that legal? We're going to talk about that in the next video. Be sure to subscribe, ring the bell.